name is Heather. This is The Reading Mama, and I thought I'd do an update of all the books I read in October. So funny, long story short, funny story, whatever you want to call it. Almost all of the books that I finished in October, I had set out to finish over the summer. I was using Beth at Little World Wanderers, A Mother's Education, which is a Charlotte Mason homeschool principle. Is kind of mothers are still continuing their education as we educate our children. And it's a great idea and I love it. Her guides are amazing, but I did like a choose your own using all my books. And then I got lost in all of the everyday things. And so I just finished most of the books last month. So I'm going to share about those. But first I wanted to share some of my audiobooks, which were not on that list, but were just enjoyable. I like to have an audiobook when I'm washing dishes. I do a lot of driving with teens and preteens. So I'm going to start with my audiobook. So first up was Mortal Engines. My husband and I rewatched the movie. It was like free on YouTube. And so we rewatched the movie and I saw it was based on a book. I didn't realize that. So I'm like, I'll give it a shot. I love YA. I like dystopian. This is in my wheelhouse. And about the first third of the book, I was 100% not interested. Almost DNF'd, but I persevered and I actually ended up really liking the story because I feel like unlike the movies, the characters were more realistic and the character development was just, which it almost always is in a book, was just so much better and very rich. If you haven't seen or read Mortal Engines, it is this strange concept that you are in this dystopian world where basically they had like a 60-minute war where everybody was destroyed, I'm guessing with atomic weapons and whatnot, and that they then now have these cities and villages and towns that are like motorized. So they like the whole town moves, and bigger towns eat other towns and then use their spare parts, and the people are then either assimilated or other things could happen. And the story is about some of those people who are not in the motorized towns and how they are standing their ground and somebody else wants to come. And there's a lot of moving parts in the story. And it was actually a very interesting, it is a series. I don't know if I'll continue the series, but like I said, if you're not feeling it the first few chapters, keep going because the characters really start to be developed and they become more realistic. You know, you kind of have like the Die Hard situation in the movie where these kids who know nothing really can all of a sudden do all these things. In the book, they're very realistic. They can't do everything. They have limits and then they're developed. They develop certain skills and then they fail because they don't have certain skills at certain points. And so it was very interesting and well written in that regard. Next audiobook I listened to was The Dutch Orphan. And I'll try to put a picture up here because I don't remember the authors. The Dutch Orphan was an interesting book. And it's a World War II historical fiction. That's like my bread and butter right there. But it's about it has two points of view. Two sisters. One is married to someone who is in the NSB there in Holland, and one is working with why can't I think of the words? Rebels. And they're trying to help protect Jewish citizens. And it just kind of revolves around a lot of different things. The storyline is wonderful. Over way too much sexualization, and I just did not enjoy that at all. I don't enjoy books that have those kind of references, so that part was not good. If you're going to listen to audiobook, definitely have earbuds or something because it sometimes is graphic. So in that regard, I wouldn't recommend it. However, the actual storyline was wonderful and very well thought out, and an interesting plot story of how these two sisters come together and the things that happen, and they have very different personalities, of course. I would maybe give it a 2 stars, mostly because of the sexual description in it. Then I read When We Had Wings, and When We Had Wings is another World War II book. This one is kind of historical fiction, but it is highly based in real events and real people, and it talks about nurses in the Southeast during World War II and how they were in prison camps, and how you have, I think, it's either 3 or 4 different points of view, and they're all nurses in different things. Like one's in Army, one's in Navy, and one is a Filipino. And just their experience in the war, their camaraderie and how they come together, and just their life things. I think there may have been 1 or 2 sexual references, it wasn't enough to bother me, and it was wonderful, and now has made me want to read about the real stories, because it really was pretty amazing, because they're just the care that they're able to give with limited supplies, with limited everything, the violence that they faced, all these different concepts come together to just weave a really beautiful story. And it's actually three different authors who wrote the different plot lines. And then it weaves together so well. So I highly recommend When We Had Wings. Then into my hard copy books. Since we're talking about things with sexual references, we'll do Tess of the D'Urbervilles. I remember reading this as a high schooler and loving it, and yeah, I was not prepared because I did not remember anything. Tess of the D'Urbervilles, it's a classic. It's Thomas Hardy. Um, Young poor girl goes off and lives with wealthy relatives. Trouble ensues. Life is completely upended. She has a very hard life, and then in the end, finally falls in love, and an original lover comes back, and then all kinds of chaos ensues. Very heavy, very dark, um, emotionally, but I really do enjoy it. But the ending shocked me. Some of the other elements kind of shocked me because, like I said, I've read it before and I didn't remember. It was kind of neat to see my little notes from high school in there, or things that I underlined or highlighted. So yes, it was an interesting read. I would not give this to my high schooler. maybe a junior or senior, I guess. Definitely not a 14-year-old freshman. But it was an interesting book. If you haven't read it, I do enjoy it, but it was a little bit grittier than I thought it would be for a Victorian novel. And then let's stay in fiction for a minute. I also finally read Girl of the Limberlost. It was amazing. Probably my top read book of the year. Um, for one, it hits all my Charlotte Mason Mama homeschool boxes. It's got all the nature, it's got education, it's got mother-daughter relationships. It's amazing. So basically, A Girl of the Limberlost is following Elnora, who is a young girl who lives in the Limberlost, which is today, it is a protected area in northern Indiana where I live. And she has lived pretty impoverished all her life, and her mother blames her for her father dying, and he died in the swamps there, and the mother blames the daughter, and that has impacted their entire life and how they interact with one another. She wants to get a further education, and so she goes on, and so despite the sorry, interruptions from little kids. Despite her mother's attitude towards her, she just continues to love, and she finds nature specimens in the Limberlost and uses those. She finds out she can sell them and make money to pay for school and other things. And it talks about just their relationships. It talks about the things she's learning. And I don't know. Part of it is the character in here is very realistic. The the character in here is just really beautiful. She has a beautiful soul. It's the kind of attitude and soul and the way you respond to things that you want to be like and often aren't. But it's not overly saccharine or anything like that. Another thing is there's a book before it called Freckles. You don't have to read it. They do kind of stand alone, but they do kind of connect. And I had read Freckles with my kids, and then we went and visited and toured Gene Stratton Porter's house up in Rome City, Indiana. And it's like one of the characters, the bird woman's house, and it was just so cool. And there's amazing tour guides there that will just help you. And we got to hike the Limberlost, so that kind of made it come alive too for me. And it was just such a beautiful story. And like, I want to be like Elnora. I want to be able to respond in her way, and then just the way it ends, because you're gonna hate some of the characters, but it does get better, and I'm telling you, it is just like a beautiful ending. I absolutely love it. This would also be a historical romance. Then I go into my nonfiction books. So I read Really Very Crunchy by Emily Morrow. You've probably seen her on social media. She's hilarious. If you haven't, go check her out. She's on Really Very Crunchy is her handle on Instagram. I think her and her husband have a podcast now too, but she is witty, hilarious, and just kind of brings to life the absurdity of the differences we have between each other in the crunchy world. And I am definitely more silky than crunchy, as she points out. I am not as crunchy as she, or scrunchy maybe, but I liked this book because it pointed out a lot of things. There were a couple chapters that gave me a little anxiety as a pastor's wife, as a mama of soon to be 8. I don't have the finances to go buy all new mattresses, and the fact that I learned about mattresses made me a little anxious. But that aside, knowing to be, she does talk about trying to do things in your capacity and understanding that we're not all at the same place, or it's a journey. And so we can respond in kindness and love towards one another, and not be like her little tagline here is a beginner's guide to removing toxins from your life without adding them to your personality. Because we all know that person who's uber crunchy and it's all the natural things, and they're not super kind about it. And so just understanding that we're all on the path. And so I really loved it. It has a lot of her wittiness in it. It has a couple of practical things in it, and then just some funny stories. So that was wonderful. Then I read Beyond Mere Motherhood by Cindy Rollins. You don't have to read her first book, Mere Motherhood, though I recommend you read it because it's amazing. I really loved this one because it's got that kind of legacy. She's looking back after she's graduated her kids, after she's because it's not just for homeschoolers, it's for everyone. And she's just encouraging you that there is life even after motherhood. So don't let motherhood completely all consume you. Take into account while you can in these early days, so that way you're not floundering when you're now all of a sudden an empty nester. And there's just so much beauty in this book, so much encouragement. You can see I've annotated here. I haven't even marked half of what I underlined or noted, but it's just, she has some practical things like if you want to be the Shakespeare mom, here's a list of all his plays so you can read it. Or just all of nature is mysterious, but that mystery is something we can learn. To me, is just an encouragement. It sometimes feels like you get to the stage I'm so overwhelmed, I can't do anything else. But this is actually life-giving to ourselves and to our children to pursue these things now. And then when we're an adult, we're not "Wah," and having a midlife crisis, because we've found our place and found our journey along the journey. And so I really enjoyed her encouragement in this particular volume. And then that leads me to the last one, which is Simplified Organization. Oh my goodness. Learn to Love What Must Be Done by Misty Winkler. Can you tell I enjoyed this book? This is a Christian perspective, so take that into account. If you're not a Christian, it might not speak to you as much. And it's not a practical how-to, here's how you clean your kitchen. She does have a online group or something like that you can become a member, and she'll coach you through it and all that. But there was just so much rich encouragement as a Christian, as a mom, as a homemaker, because whether you're staying at home or not, if you are a woman, you're a homemaker. You have a home and you have the opportunity to make it or destroy it, basically. But she has just so much encouragement to love what you're doing, and it has to get done. So why not figure out how to do it in a way that brings glory to God and honors Him, and also honors your family, and just how serving in our homes by simple things like cleaning the kitchen and sweeping the floor, changing a diaper again, that these are all things that bring glory to God, because of our attitude and how we perceive things, and change our minds to realize that this is a kind of service just as much as overseas missions, and things like that, you are serving and ministering to your family. And there's just so many great encouragements in here. I don't even know where to begin, because really it was the whole book. As you can see, this is going to take me a while to commonplace. But I have really, really loved the encouragement in it, and just helping me get my mind back to that kind of thinking, and realizing that I can serve the Lord in my home, and that is enough to love my family well, love the Lord as I love my family. It's just really, really good. Here we go. Here, much of our unhappiness and negativity arises from not taking our thoughts captive as scripture commands. And that's really kind of what it comes down to, is that we're thinking, oh, woe is me, well, I have to do this, I have to do that, that I have to versus I get to mentality and things like that. It's not so much a motivational speech or anything. I've read homemaking books that were very you can do it, and those I didn't find encouragement. This is spiritual and scriptural encouragement, but it's also practical, not in these are the steps to clean your kitchen, but a practical of get off the couch and go do it. And that kind of encouragement. And it's whether you put it off till tomorrow or you do it today, the dishes have to get done. And so it was very encouraging. So those are the books I read. So here's hard copies. But I did really have a great reading month. Most of my set I finished. I didn't necessarily start them all that month, but this has been a summer-long project, but I have really enjoyed my reading. So hopefully I'll be back in November sharing what I read in November.